Good day, everybody. This is the Ecclesiarch here, back with another and very anticipated episode of FORGECAST. We're finally back. It's been a while, but we have been waiting for some things to talk about, and boy, do we have some crazy stuff to talk about. And as always, here with BJ the Brave. BJ?
Yo, how's it going, my man? Yeah, super excited, super excited. We've been like what we're going to talk about today. We've been asking for so long. You put a lot of effort in last month, obviously, into gathering feedback from the community, and I just feel like a lot of that's come together, right? And we've got some answers, and I can't wait to get into it with you today, Ecclesiarch. It's going to be a fun one.
Absolutely. I gotta say, I love, before we even go into detail, I love what Everguild have done. This is what we want to see. This is what the communication, the consideration of what the fans have been demanding. And oh my God, they did just so much good with this patch. And, you know, for me, it's a double prize because we also had the great patch in HHL. But I gotta say, the Warpforge patch is actually the better one this time, I think.
Yeah, Warpforge wins.
Finally, right?
Finally. We're 10-1 down.
Yeah, man, like totally. This was huge. I was really hoping and expecting that if we got such a good patch for HHL, I want to see the same for Warpforge, and they delivered. So, want to dive in?
I mean, just to piggyback quickly, right? Just to give a kind of like, because we always break things down, we talk about things very logically, but just to give like a very human, emotional kind of like perspective on this, right? Since I started playing this game, I would say, if you ask me, BJ, what was your most like on an emotional level, most hype moment? What was the most exciting thing? There's been a few, right? There's definitely been a few. Like definitely when they kind of the tyranny thing came in, and you made the thing, don't make this change, and they like that was a pretty cool one. But I would say for me personally, my number one hype was when the tower released, because since early access, it's the only new faction we've had, like a full new faction with incredibly well designed cards. And I love tower anyway, so I was super hyped, like 10 out of 10 for hype. I would honestly say that this is second to that. This is the second most hype I have been since starting the game, and it's in part because I actually feel like we are getting two new factions, quite frankly, which I'm sure we're going to dive more into. So yeah, I'm super hyped.
Pretty much it's two new factions. You could say like that. Let's friggin' go. And let's take a look first at the Tau changes, because I think one of the biggest expected thing here was the nerf to the Tau. And let's take a look at some of these changes and let's see what we think, BJ. So number one is sniper drone nerf. So they lowered the range attack from 4 to 3. Ooh, yeah, that's gonna be a hit, because sniper drone and stealth drone was a big thing for Tau, honestly speaking. Now, I'll be honest, I'll be saying directly, like before we even go deep there, some of these changes I love, some of these changes I don't love that much. I would say the sniper drone change, I kind of do get where it's coming from, because if you don't have like a way of attacking from with a flying unit, you're kind of gonna take a lot of damage with this guy. So maybe that was done to make it easier for Tyranids and some other factions to really do something about it. Though I have to say, the change that comes after next, which is the Crisis Bodyguard, I'm totally up for, because that card, I mean, 4 energy shielded Vanguard with 5 ranged, to me was a little bit extreme, even though the melee attack is quite low on it. It was like a big wall that really made things like really, really problematic. Though once again, I would say both of these changes, even if they hadn't done it, I would have been fine. I wouldn't say like, okay, hammer these cards. And I'll say number 3, and I'll move to you, BJ. Like Breacher Shasui, I'll be honest, I don't get why they did that.
Oh man,
like who played Breacher Shasui? Like what?
Me, I played it in my goddamn infantry deck, and I'm sad. I'm sad that
I know, right?
Like this was I honestly, I'm not going to do much moaning in this podcast, because I'm super happy about this. But the moaning will come in the Tau section, because there are bits in Tau that like I'm not happy about, and that is one of them, right? Like, who was playing infantry? There was an opportunity to see some different Tau builds, and then we go and nerf like the breacher? What we do? Why? Who was asking for that? Have you heard one person? Have you seen one comment on Discord where someone said that Chassis breacher has got to go down to 4? Like, that's the problem with Tau. You know, Barrick's slaying everyone on ladder because of that Chassis point of range damage. It's like, come on, man. So I don't quite understand that. I'd be curious to learn how they arrive at these decisions. There must be something. There must be some thinking. I imagine it must be something to do with aligning it to, because quite a lot of 5-drops got touched in this patch, didn't they? And there seems to be a bit of balancing at the 5-drop mark, and especially things that had like 5-5-5 stats, and there seems to be a little bit of moving. And I'm wondering if it's because they did that they looked at the Chassis as another one of those in that range and said, well, let's just balance this. That's the only like logical thing I can think of. But certainly nobody was asking for that, and I'm kind of a little bit sad that one got touched. But to your point, like the Crisis Bodyguard, I mean, I still think the Bodyguard is okay because of a little thing called the Dynamic Offensive, which basically means that this card is still potentially a flanker with shield and 4-range attack, which is insanely powerful when you get that combo off. However, playing it on its own, it has lost quite a bit because its stats aren't great anymore. Like, its health is equal to its cost, which is never really that good. It's got terrible melee damage, and it's not a flyer, right? So in this with a new Chaos meta and the Chaos cards and more Necrons on the rise, things like Shot Scorpec Destroyer, right? This card's just going to be taken out very easily for very little kind of payback. And even the range damage, like what I liked on this card and similar Tau cards like the Broadside, is that what they did is the over buffing of the range damage compensating for the poor melee meant that the card could trade up, right? So we just mentioned like the Chasui, which obviously has 5 health. It's a 5-drop. So you could play this on 4. They would play their 5-drop. You could trade up into that. And one of the things that, where the battle suits have really been hit in this nerf, is a lot of them have lost their ability to trade up, right? When we talk about the Broadside later, you can't take out, what's the Chaos Venom Throat, the 6-drop, the Venom thing, yeah? So you play your 5-drop, your Broadside, Chaos plays the Venom Throat, you now can't take that out. With the combination of the Broadside and the Warlord doesn't take out just an unbuffed Venom Crawler, right? Venom Crawler, that's it. That is what the Broadside, that is what the battle suits have lost in this nerf. They've lost their ability to trade up, and I actually think that's going to hurt the faction quite a bit. So I don't think this card is like never going to be played, because again, Dynamic Offensive is going to ensure that you do, and you're still going to need some Vanguard, right? But your other one that you talked about was the Sniper Drone. I think because it's got long range, it's okay. Obviously, it can't take out Praetorian Guards. It can't take out the Chaos. You know, those kind of 4 health. Again, the trading up thing, like it's lost some of that, but at least it has long range, right? So it's not getting hit back. So I think the Sniper Drone's all right.
Yeah, the one that I do like the change, however, is the Piranha change, the lowering of the companion.
Yeah.
Honestly speaking, I would say even would have been better if the same with Broadside Battlesuit, you know? They should have just lowered the companion and left the ranged attack, I think, because the whole... let's say the cancerous bit of the Tau was them rebuilding the board out of scratch every single time. So their stats being inflated, I think, was kind of okay. Because if you take away the whole drone spam problem, then you have a faction which doesn't really have real good removal, apart from Long Strike, obviously. So the higher stats was kind of justified. I guess perhaps the line of thinking that EG put here was that, well, if we do this, then drone builds are going to be not working anymore. So perhaps they went in like 50-50 route. But once again, I would say like I would like to see the stats unchanged, but the companions lowered. Though the Piranha change is definitely welcome, for sure. Yeah. With the Broadside, as you mentioned, that's going to hurt because 6 is usually a big number, because now, let me remind you, you're no longer going to be able to shoot down the Lich Guard as easily, and not being able to take out the Lich Guard is usually a big point, especially considering Necrons are going to be a big deal. We'll get to that, of course, in a minute.
I don't like the Broadside change. I don't think it was necessary. One of the issues, just it's kind of like my main point really on the Tau nerfs, is it's not so much any of the individual effects. It's the exponential impact, right? It's the fact that Savior, which we're going to come on to, is more expensive. It's the fact that drone spam is harder to do now.
Yes.
Which basically means that broadside already got nerfed. Why do we need to then take out the 6? And if you know what it was, and also it's difficult because I agree, like Piranha, absolutely, Companion 1 makes so much sense because the toxicness of Piranha's drones costing 0 was a problem. Whereas the broadside often got played more like a Carnifex. It just got dropped on E5 and it didn't even play its drones. Like playing its drones was more of a late game value luxury. So like I don't know about like the reducing the drones wouldn't have been that big a nerf on the broadside, but I do take your point about refilling the board really easily for free. It wouldn't have been able to do that. I just think actually in this particular balance patch, I wouldn't have touched the broadside given the other nerfs that are around it, and I think it's kind of been nerfed anyway. Yeah.
What do you think about the Enforcer one with the lowered melee?
Yeah, I quite like that one.
Same.
I quite like that. Yeah, it was too powerful, and it was a bit like you couldn't cheat it. At least you can cheat it a little bit now. And 4's not that bad anyway. 4's still, it's fine. It's still doing some. Yeah, I like that one.
It's still gonna hurt. Still gonna hurt.
Don't get the Razor Shark one at all. This is another one. I'm like,
what is Razor Shark? Like,
I mean, I would love to play it. Like, I actually don't think it's a bad card, particularly when Orcs aren't meta, because the veteran Stormboy eats it for breakfast. But like, it's not a bad card. It's a good draft card, and we should think about draft. I know you and I don't play tons of draft, but it's a good draft card. It has an instant effect on the board that is meaningful. 3 damage. That means with your Warlord, you can kill a 5 health unit. And also, not everybody's like you and I sitting on like every card in the collection, right? Like if you're a beginner and you're starting out with Tau, that is a card I would absolutely play in my tempo deck. So, but again, who was asking for this nerf? Like, where's this come from? I don't know. So no, I'm a bit miffed on that one.
Well, the next one is actually really good because we've mentioned this, BJ, with the Long Strike. We said that the best nerf for Long Strike would be to reduce the marker light from 5 to 3. Exactly what we said, and I'm totally there with it. I think the lowering of the melee attack of Long Strike doesn't really change much because like it was still a unit that you played for its ranged attack, for its flank, for its marker light, and then you really don't care what happens to it next turn because it's just it's most probably gonna get blown up. And by the point when Long Strike is played, there's such large amount of energy that having 4 or 3 melee attacks isn't gonna change much. I think the main change there is the marker light, which kind of means that if you're playing Chaos, I think this gives Chaos the most room to breathe because it means that he can no longer take out 2 big units with 1 strike. Because up till now it used to do it. But the scary part here actually is that can you remind me what's the ranged attack on that thing, Long Strike? 7, right? One thing is very important to mark that might be a problem for the Tau. That means that Long Strike alone can no longer take out the Dreadnought, the Hellbrute, sorry, not Dreadnought, because it's going to leave it at, I believe, 1 HP. It has 7 HP, right? The Hellbrute, yeah, with 2 armor. So
that's a good point.
So it's a very scary part because now the Hellbrute is immune to Long Strike. So as I said, it's going to be not immune, but it's going to survive it, which means that this is going to be a big blow for the matchup, which I kind of understand because Chaos versus Tau was kind of...
Yeah. I would have been averse to them actually putting his range attack up to 8, for a 7... For an 8 cost unit, like having 8 range, that's the whole point. Like, you want him to be able to punch through something, don't you? That should be the given. So the point that you can't take out Hellbrute is a problem. Outside of that, I do like these changes. I think it's really good for everything you've just said. And also the 4 to 3 is interesting because things like Fireheart, for example, that means Fireheart can come on, attack Long Strike, not die, giving immunity to its neighboring units because it has 4 health, right? So it can attack now that 3, and even like other flankers, right? Like there's other flankers in Necrons and Chaos, I think, that have 4 health. So it will be meaningful in little interactions. But overall, Long Strike, no problem with that. I think that's a good one. What do you think to the next 2? The Serene Unifier is obviously their one of their approaches to tackling Onvar specifically, and then obviously Savior Protocols is really about slowing down the whole drone spam thing. What do you think to those 2?
I think overall I agree with those two changes, especially the severe protocol, because one of the less likable things about the Tau is certainly the drone spam. Because the when you play Tau on battle suits, it's really cool. It's a cool faction to fight. It's a very cool faction to play. I think for everybody, the most annoying thing about the Tau was for sure drone spam. So more that thing gets slowed down, the better. Because actually, I would go say this is a better change than nerfing the drones. Because if you would nerf the drones, as we said, like one of the bigger problems was if you nerf the drones too much, then it's unplayable, right? So this is better. This means that it's much slower to start up. But if you do start it up, let's say you play this and then you play experimental drones, right, on 5. So you're sacrificing 2 turns, but then you're gonna have the old Tau effect. Basically, you're gonna be dropping the crazy board. So it makes it more dedicated. So it means that you need to have now a dedicated drone deck to actually abuse the drones, which makes a lot of sense to me. With Syrian Unifier, I think they also went in the correct direction because Aonva was a problem. Obviously, he was the problem, and mostly his ability was a problem. And I was thinking, what are they gonna do? Are they gonna nerf the individual cards or what? And I'm happy they didn't. They just made sure that he doesn't get to do all these things for cheap, because if you were playing Onva and you had an ethereal on the board, well, I mean, next turn you could just one-shot somebody with 3 units. Now it's gonna be harder. Now you gotta keep that energy in mind. So I think it's all right.
100%. It feels like the kind of, if you think about the classic, if you think like Barrick's deck, the classic kind of drone value, the on value thing, it's more like, I think what's going to happen is the weakness of that deck grows, which is the early game, and it becomes still a very powerful deck in the late game, but can you get there? So if the meta slows down, which ironically, like if we move more towards like a Necron control type, if we move towards a control meta, that might actually help the drone deck in that context. So people should definitely like test the drone decks. But if the pace of the current meta was to persist, then they would seem much weaker, and much slower to start up. I like that analogy you said there. How quick is it to start up? I think that's a big thing. Yeah, I mean, I kind of like the Serene Unifier. It just makes it more costly. They'll still play the finisher, Storm of Fire, as a finisher. It won't be any problem. The fact that it's cost 1 more won't make any difference. But what will make a difference is people's ability to bank early Storm of Fires towards a big one. And the heal is still only 1, so you still get the heal benefit just as you did. So it's kind of like a nice middle ground. We'll have to test it. We'll have to test it to see. It's a bit harder on the ethereals, right? So like Onshi and the Honored Ethereal, when they give you Serene Unifier, because what you used to do with those is you would bank the Storm of Fire immediately, because obviously the card might die next turn, whereas now that's more costly to do. So that might not work as well. What about the Persian empires? It's probably not that big. At first, I was like, why have they done that? But I don't think it's going to make much difference, to be honest.
It doesn't really change much, because whenever the Tau are playing this, it's usually 0 cost anyway.
Yeah.
And the thing with this is that it's once again meant to slow them down a little bit. Now, like it's slowing the Tau tempo down, which I kind of understand, and it's cool. And honestly speaking, you know what? There's one thing really good about this. We're gonna see more Shadow Sun, and as I mentioned, even though I'm not a fan of the character at all, I do want to see the Legendary Warlord being played, and this tempo slowing down is gonna be good, because Shadow Sun is gonna be the one who can buy time because of 3 attacks. So it's gonna be good. It's gonna be a big deal.
I think Shadow Sun's gonna be very good, but unfortunately, one of the big things that they haven't touched in this balance patch is the offense card.
Absolutely.
And that really hurts Shadow Sun. So I still don't quite think it's going to be Shadow Sun's day because of that. I think we'll, down the line, eventually get that buff.
Yeah.
Maybe on the Tau Return buff. But right now, a Tau Battlesuit deck is still pretty strong. There's an opportunity for like some vehicles and maybe even infantry builds to see play a little bit more with Tau. I don't think Tau are going to be bad, but I definitely don't think that they're going to be the absolute power horse that they were.
Absolutely.
I'm definitely going to be playing Tau. I'm definitely not someone who is going to be like, well, I'm not going to play Tau now because of this. I'm really keen to see how I can make it work within this new context. And don't forget, one of the things they did well with Tau is they got the kind of principle of all cards being useful pretty good from the start.
Yes.
So I'm kind of looking forward to reinventing the decks and seeing what I can, putting the creative hat back on and going back in. All right. Anything else on the Tau, or should we get into some of the fun stuff?
I think it's time to get to some of the fun stuff.
Let's
All
go.
I'm going to say about the Tau is that I'm going to love playing them now. So that's the actual thing.
Let's go. What are we doing next?
Scroll down to the Ultramarines. Oh my God. And do these guys have some crazy changes? And,
oh boy.
Oh, let me just scroll out a little bit here, because this is some big stuff, man. This is some big stuff. Okay. Ultramarines, and before we even say anything, I'm just gonna say one quick thing. Scout health has been increased from 1 to 2. Finally, it doesn't lose a 1 versus 1 to a Grot. Yay. So
is that I was trying to think what that was for. Is that what it's for? Yeah.
I think that is literally what it was for, because it was memed to a point that I think EG just said, okay, here you go.
Yeah. So. And I guess things like Imatech can't just ping it now.
Yeah.
And the new Tyranid AoE with the 1 AoE thing that can't ping it. So yeah, fair enough. I don't think it'll make really that much of a difference in terms of how people build decks or how much they use Scout or the rest of it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's cool.
Well, look at this. Firstborn.
Actually, no. Do you know what? Sorry, I don't kind of want to ruin this, but where the Scout, and I've only just thought of this now, but actually where it might make more of a difference is that we are going to talk about other cards that buff health.
Ah, yeah.
So that would mean that the Scout would go up to could potentially go up to 3 health and not be removed by the Warlord. So that in that context, that will make more of a difference. So
anyway. Absolutely.
Mm.
Okay, we got the Firstborn, so health lower to 2, but if you do it on Codex, it gains 1 attack, 1 ranged attack, and 1 health. So it will be stronger than the Primaris Marine. Yay! Because I'm a big fan of the Firstborn Marines and not the Primaris. But apart that aside, this card can be an ever-growing menace. Because every time you do the Codex, this thing is going to grow.
This is one of my favorite changes in the whole patch.
Absolutely.
It seems subtle. This is a new card, I should say, first of all. It's a completely new card, right? Like what the Firstborn used to do and what it does now and the purpose of it are completely different. Completely different. Now, that's not to say that they weren't both in aggro decks. I think they'll continue to be.
Of course.
But you're absolutely right. The ability to be a really solid early, like first turn play that can survive rather than do the damage. That's the main difference. And then if it does survive, it's a real problem because it can just keep growing and it can have an exponential.
Yeah, it's the Ultramarine Noise Marine basically now that can keep growing.
Who can grow the biggest Firstborn? Who can grow the biggest Firstborn? Let's see who can do it this season. I think that's going to be a fun little sub challenge.
That's
really
a nice
cool
challenge. I like that.
Yeah. It's cool. I like it. Great deck, and it's going to become like a little bit of an engine for the sort of Ultramarine Go Wide decks, which is one of the kind of archetypes I was asking for. And we'll come back. I'll talk more about that when we get to some of the other changes.
Speaking of going wide, they received some very good early game stuff. And I want to actually compare 2 units, which is the Intercessor Sergeant and Sternguard Sergeant. This is a very interesting change. Now, with your Intercessor Sergeant, which was basically just a vanilla drop, it has increased health, and it also gained Codex to deal 1 damage to a random enemy troop, while the Sternguard has a health increase to 4. So basically what it means that both of them are a 3-drop with high health. Now they cannot be executed by Swarmlord, for example. But here's the thing. The Sergeant is going to have, the Intercessor Sergeant is going to have better stats because of a higher ranged attack that it has. But it also is going to have an interesting thing. It's going to always target troops. So technically speaking, this is more consistent if you want to be removing stuff from the enemy's board. While on the other hand, like you got the Sternguard Sergeant, that is going to be a very aggro option. And it's going to be so scary because Sternguard Sergeant was one of the best cards that Ultramarines have.
Right. I can't believe he's got the health buff. I was just like, what's going on?
That's a Uriel buff. That's a Uriel buff, man. The aggro.
I also wonder if these 2 cards are like if there's like a collector's synergy here, right? So if you're new to the game, you're a beginner, you've got the Intercessor Sergeant. It's a common card. You've got that straight away. And it's almost like once you get the rare, you unlock the upgrade, the Stern Guard Sergeant. That was one way I looked at it.
It's a thing, but that's the point. I don't think that it's inferior to it in any way.
No, I agree. I think you make a good point. And the four range, by the way, well, that removes like the Crisis Bodyguard that we just talked about. So the 4 range means that it trades up. It removes Praetorian Guard, right? So 4 range is actually a big deal. And there's subtle differences. Quite honestly, dude, I just want to play both of them.
Same. I'm definitely doing it. And once again, it's a vanilla card being touched. And speaking of vanilla cards being touched, look at this.
With good art. Vanilla with good art.
Tyrannic War Veterans. Increase the melee to 3 and change description. Rally. All enemies lose stealth and camouflage. Welcome to HHL. Okay, so I'm joking because we finally got anti-stealth. But look at this. We got something even more interesting that we've never had in Horus Heresy Legions. We got something that can actually remove camouflage. There was no tool in HHL to remove ward unless it was a very specific tool like that only a faction had, or if it was a specific random tool. It was not a dedicated tool ever. Look at this. It removes stealth and camouflage. This addresses 2 problems of the Ultramarines instantly. A, you are no longer going to be cheesed by stealth bugs. That's one. And number 2 is going to be that you removing camouflage means that, well, Venom Crawler doesn't automatically win a game against you anymore, which is very important. I think 1 copy of these guys is going to be in a lot of decks, and I love it.
I think it's a tech card, and I'm not too sure I'd run it in like an aggro deck, because, you know, like if you get to 3E, you need to play the card for tempo. And there's nothing wrong with playing it for tempo. Like, it's still a 3/3/3. It's like not as good as the other 3 drops, but it's not like the end of the world playing it on tempo. But in all the other decks, I think you're absolutely right. I think you would run this card. And it's actually going to be... It's interesting, though, because, like, who are the other really good tempo deck? Eldar. Yeah, and Eldar run things like Striking Scorpion, Warp Spiders, right? So it's really gonna... If they play that on 3 and you answer with a Veteran Sergeant, that's like... It's pretty good. And the other one is, like you say, I think is Chaos, because there's so much camouflage on Chaos. And so all of a sudden, the... what's the hard removal called? The 5-drop?
Oh my god.
Retribution, is
Retribution, yeah, Retribution.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome now in control decks. Now you're just like, oh, you're hiding. Oh, you got camouflage. There we go. Press that. Develop my board with a 3-drop. So I develop the board, which gets rid of your thing, and then I remove. That is such a tempo turn. It's a great combo.
Don't forget, you can remove that from the Eldar Warlords now as well. The camouflage that they can put on themselves. Because one of the tactics that the Eldar had against the aggro Marines was they would heal up and put the camouflage on themselves with that strike and fade or whatever it's called. Evasive maneuver, yeah. And they would just then stay defensive and you would never be able to play Death from Above on them. But now you can. Now what's going to happen is they dropped it, you drop this, and it removes the camouflage from, let's say, the Eldar Warlord, and then you can target them again. So there's a lot of use there.
100%. 100%. Oh, man, I'm so excited. I just want to go and play, but it's not out yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Eliminator change isn't that big, I think. I don't know.
Nah.
It's just a very simple one. This is a vanilla change, so we're going to ignore it. There's an interesting thing, though, here, like Primaris Invader Codex, give 1 ranged attack to all your vehicles. Now, the interesting thing is that includes itself, so it's going to have very high ranged attack when you play it, and it has the ability to stack up, which means that, well, you know, your vehicles are going to be doing work. That's pretty cool.
It's a super great card, because what I didn't realize about this at first is that it's one of those like ongoing effects, isn't it? Like the 6-drop. So it's not a rally, it's not a codex, it's just ongoing. If it's on the board, so you can put it on the board, and then if it survives, I can drop a vehicle next turn and the vehicles get the buff, and that's why I think this is really cool. It was already pretty good. Like the stats were already decent on the Invader, And now we can do true vehicle decks. This is one of the cool things that's come out of this, is that new archetypes in the Ultramarines, new archetypes in the Necrons are now available. And that's where I feel EG have really listened to the feedback, to our podcast, to the community feedback. When we talked about what makes it fun, everybody said having like Tau just showed how many different decks you can play. And that's what this is unlocking. You know, we're going to have some, not just like mean, but like genuinely good vehicle decks, which is awesome.
Absolutely. And the next change I also like, the primary chaplain. Lower the melee from 4 to 3, but now you can change the description to your description changed by 1 melee in range to all your troops, including himself. Now, this is really, really good, because now when you drop it on Codex, it buffs up and it has better stats than the Honor Guard, because it has higher range. Then it will scale up. It will get stronger every turn. So once again, it has solidified its place in the aggro deck, unlike the Honor Guard, which is usually better because of the defense. Like, you have so many choices now for mid game, man. This is amazing.
That's awesome. And you've always said that EG games are very they're very like tempo orientated, and that's where I think Ultramarines are just benefiting massively here, because that's how I like playing Ultramarines, and I just can't wait. I can't wait to play some Ultramarines.
Same, man. I'm just going crazy. And Aggressor Sergeant 1-2 blast, I'm just gonna ignore that. It's another vanilla change. It's still, it would be interesting, but there are so many better drops now that you're just not gonna be playing that. But think about this. Apothecary Polixis. Lowered melee attack to 3 and range to 4, so a massive nerf, but change the description to Codex, heal 2 to this troop and adjacent units. Now, let me just say one thing. If anybody's doubting that this card is going to be staple, in the HHL, we have Ultramarines, just like here, and they have the card called Apothecary Theon, which is exactly what this is, but weaker, because Theon only heals 2 units and it's random. So sometimes it might not go where you want. This one is going to heal itself and the adjacent, so you can always keep healing your Warlord as long as this thing is alive. This is going to be the control tool. Not only a control tool, you'll even play this on aggro, because imagine you have a Sterngar Sergeant, right? And you attack with it. Now it's 2 HP, so your enemy can take it out, but suddenly you drop this, it heals it up, and your aggro is still pushing. This is so good. This is going to be a staple card. BJ, what do you think? I know you like this card.
One of the things I was looking forward to this conversation is you selling me on this, because when I first looked at it, because I actually did like the old Polixis, right? So I wasn't too sure whether this was a nerf or a buff, because and I'm genuinely trying to get my head around it, because well, first of all, the stats are poor, right? So as a 5-drop, the stats, and one of the things I loved about the card was that the stats were good and that you couldn't cheat it. Well, that's out of the window now. So it's fundamentally a different card now. It's much more role-based. The fact that it heals itself is irrelevant on the turn that it comes down, because it's got full health anyway. So then it's like you say, it's like guaranteeing that it can go on the Lord. Okay, that's a slight improvement, but a lot of the time it went on the Lord anyway, and the general flow of the game by E5 would mean that it would have gone on the Lord. So I'd say like that's a small improvement. So it's more your point about what you played previous turn. So for example, we just talked about the improved Chaplain and the improved Primaris Invader. You play the Invader down, and then that can attack, and then you can get the heal. So it's much more a dedicated heal card. I don't know how I feel about it. I definitely want to test it and see, and I'd take your experience of using a similar thing in HHL, right? If you say it worked really well there, then I kind of take you at your word for that.
Yeah, because I remember they made the same change in HHL. First we had like the basic Polixis type, and then it was changed like this, and it became like a staple on every single Ultramarine card. So we'll see. But I do feel like this is gonna be a big deal, especially if the meta is gonna slow down. We'll see about that. But the next change I love, Storm Talon. Look at that, the shit meme card. Suddenly, Codex deals 3 damage to a random enemy.
Oh, let's go! Let's go!
I'm 100% I'm playing that card. This is so good because it goes on a troop. You drop this, And with your Warlord, you can deal 5 damage, so you can take something out, and then you have this gigantic flying unit on the board. Oh my god. This is, and it's Codex too.
There are some changes that just feel better than others. And like this is a change that like the whole community can get excited about because it's a beginner card. It's quite an iconic card, like, and it just had so much potential. It already was a 7 health flyer, which is not easy to take out without hard removal, right? And the buff to 4, I think, is very relevant because things like, again, vet sergeants, like other flyers, can't just cheat it. They're going to take something back now. And most importantly, what everybody's been asking for is a codex or rally ability that does damage. Now, I like the idea of this being AoE before, but I think you're right. I think this is pretty good. Like the fact that it is troop only does mean that you can actually guarantee the kind of back forth removal flow of the game. Yeah, I'm using this deck, and again, proper vehicle decks, guys. Like we've now got this and Invader that weren't being played in vehicle decks. These will absolutely. Oh, and by the way, don't forget, we're looking at the Storm Talon. What about if this thing has armor, which the new armored support can give it? You know, so then it becomes a real problem because you can just keep triggering that. You just keep triggering the 3 damage. It's going to be man, can't wait.
It's going to be so scary.
Oh,
and
man.
Look at that. You don't want to play vehicles? Well, we got the Blade Guard veteran with an armor.
Oh, hold on, quick question.
Yeah?
You'll be someone who. I wonder what the audio sounds like. You know, on the deal 3 damage. You know, because how the audio is different on like the Land Raider and this. You know, that's something I'm also kind of interested in.
I wonder. Yeah, that's interesting to see what they have got ready for us. I hope they got a good one ready for us. Well,
super cool.
Anyway, Blade Guard veteran change is beautiful. I didn't get my armor on my Chaos Terminators, but I got a Chaos Terminator for the Ultramarines. So Blade Guard veteran. And I want to stress just how terrifying this is gonna be, because this is a unit that heals on Codex, people. So you got an armored unit, and imagine you drop this and you stick at Polixis nearby. It's just not gonna die. It's a crazy front line.
I want to play this game. This is too my head in, man. I just can't wait. I can't wait all weekend for this patch to drop. There's so many decks, dude. Oh,
of course, there's the vanilla changed because they just have to do it, increasing the health of Desolation Marine. No, thank you. We don't care. And look at this: Devastator Centurions now have a codex to gain armor. Ooh. This is an interesting one. You know,
which one are we on? Which one are we on?
Devastator Centurions.
Oh yes, yeah. I like this.
Yeah, it's another scaling thing.
I think 7 energy is. I don't know. What do you think about this? I can't decide if it's 6 or 7, but I feel like 7 is like the most expensive. It's like the top end that you can get away with playing a unit that doesn't impact the board immediately, but is hella powerful. Like if it doesn't get removed, I feel like anything more than 7, like it's just too much. You're just losing the game at that point. But like the Hellbrute is a good example, isn't it? Like you can drop a Hellbrute on 7 and it do nothing, and you'd be like, yeah, what's up?
Yeah, because you just gotta remove it because it's such a terrifying thing.
Next turn, it's going to cause you all sorts of problems. And I think the Devastator Centurion is similar now because you get the armor on 7. It's got 8 health, so 8 health with 1 armor is good, and then the very next turn it's going to be 2, and now it's problem city. I mean, you just said about what was it? Heal into the Blade Guard Vanguard, was it, and then into this. So it's almost like a toughness deck, isn't it? Like if you want to build a toughness deck, there's.
I want to say one thing too, BJ. You know what I love the most about this? It's the fact that you got to consider all of these good cards are 7 energy, and you also have the Epistolary Librarian. So there's going to be so many different decks because some of them are going to prefer this, some of them are going to prefer the Storm Talon. I think most decks are more going to go for Storm Talon, but in general, there's so many interesting things. And don't forget, there's still that Assault Centurion there, which is still a very good card. So, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. But
like you've got the archetype, right? You've got the Storm Talon 7, Dreadnought on 8. That's in the vehicle synergies.
Yes.
Whereas you've got the Assault Centurion and the Devastator Centurion in the which I think is this kind of like, I don't know what to call it, but like a toughness build, it's actually like a real mid-range build. I love those builds in other games. I can't wait to play that. I remember building it before with Ultramarines and going, it's just missing. It's just not quite there. But these are going to be units. So, like early game, right, where you've always said you play the tempo, there's going to be these units that are on the board that cost 4 energy, 5 energy. Yeah. They've got decent bodies. You can think of some of like the Chaos units, for example. They've got decent bodies, and they generally win you the game in Warforge. But against this type of toughness deck, you're going to drop one of these units, and those units are going to look so puny, and they're going to have to trade them all in. That's how a proper mid-range deck is meant to work. Like the bigger units meant a 2-for-1, the smaller units.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to happen. I think you can build that deck now. I can't wait,
Absolutely,
my friend.
You can.
Cannot wait.
Now I need a dramatic drum, Captain Sicarius.
Yes.
Change description to Codex, and I quote, how long have I been saying? Change Sicarius to Codex. Heal 5 and gain Vanguard until your next turn. So it's a Vanguard now. Yay!
Great card. And so when I first read it, I was like, oh, cool. So it doesn't. The heal is irrelevant, like on the turn you drop it, but it's the fact that it gets the Vanguard. So a 10 health Vanguard is a meaningful impact. Like obviously it dies to hard removal, but outside of that, this is a great card now. Like you said before, you get me down to 3 health, but then I Codex next turn, I get plus 5 health. Yeah, and then we got what's the thing that the greatest deeds, which has changed as well.
Yes, with lower the cost of all cards in your hand by 2.
Awesome. Oh my god. Just think about when you play Manius Calgar, right? Think about those games where you've just been drawing and your hand is so goddamn full, and or a Tigerius where all of the spells are just like mounting up in your hand. Absolutely. And then you play this and then you just make 8 cards cost 2 less. Are you kidding me? Like this is a finisher, guys. This is what I want to see from a 9-cost legendary. Where is the Avatar of Cain buff?
Where is the Iskandar Kaon? Okay, EG, you're taking the correct route. Next, I want to see Avatar of Cain, and I want to see Iskandar Kaon with meaningful changes.
Yes.
Okay.
And he also would like you to take the armor off the Venom Crawler and put it on the Terminator. He tells me that one in private. You've probably not heard that one before, but he really, really would like.
But of course, rebalance the Terminator stats. Obviously, reduce the range attack or something. So but I want to see that, man. I want to see that happen.
If you become a guild warden on my channel, Ecclesiarch, I'm going to make you a special badge that has a +1 armor.
I swear to God, I would have already done that. Unfortunately, it's not possible in my country.
Well, you're going to have to make it possible. If you want your +1 armor, that's what you've got to do. You have to move.
I gotta talk to YouTube. I want that armor. Okay.
All you need is a VPN to make you log in from a different country, right?
That is actually true.
There you go.
That is actually true.
Yeah.
All right. So then we got sheltered location, which is give camouflage to your troops. Now, this makes a lot of sense because if you're playing like something like a Centurion, you do want to have this, right? Because you want to make it immortal. So essentially, sheltered location would be more of a combo piece, making your toughness deck even tougher. So it makes a lot of sense to me to have something like that. It's a support for it. While at the same time, you got Knights of Macragge that now give +1 attack, ranged, and health to your troops. You know what? This is a proper go-wide tactic. You go wide, you play this to buff it even more up. It's like a zoo deck from Hearthstone.
Go back and watch my video. Bad cards that need changing. I talk specifically about this change. It is the exact change that I asked for, and exactly for that reason. It used to give +2 melee attack to everything for 1 turn. And I just looked at the artwork and I was like, do you know what? Like we've already said, that the Marines feel quite nice when you play them as like tempo, these big beefy Marines, right? And like the idea of the Knights of Macragge just kind of like sealing that, like just just what's the word I'm looking for? Like enhancing them, like growing. I don't know. It felt like they just got a sort of gene injection right there and then now they've gone from being Ultramarines to Ubermarines. Do you know what I mean? Like
I know, right?
That's what this does. And in the game, like you said, it really does open up the go wide archetype now with the change to Firstborn and the change to the 3-drops, the Intercessor Sergeant. I think the first deck I'm going to play is the go wide deck because I'm really excited to kind of test this, and 2 copies of this will be in that deck 100%. It actually even made me wonder about a Tigerius. You know, Tigerius now is quite interesting because you could build decks where you play a balance where you play a lot more units because there's a lot more viable units now, and you have these specific techs like Knights of Macragge, your Humanity Shield or your finishers, you know, your Death from Above for your finishers. And actually, the Tigerius being able to draw specifically a stratagem becomes way more meaningful in that kind of build. And I think that's something to test and to try. It could become really consistent in the stratagems that you draw.
Speaking of stratagems, I'm just gonna jump over here to the final one and then go back to the others because Avenging Zeal. Take a look at this. It's the same thing,
baby.
but now the cost lowers by 1 when a friendly unit triggers a codex. So this needs to be in your hand. So with Tigurius, you have such a great chance of just drawing this and then making it scale. And this is such an aggro thing because imagine you got a board and suddenly you slap this on and the orc is imagine like the orc is just sitting there saying, haha, I got 2 armor, and you're like, well, sucks to be you because now you're gonna get smacked.
Dude.
This is
I'm so excited to play Warforged. I can't even tell you. Like this is awesome. Right? This is awesome. Like we were quite upset about the change to Uriel, right? Like they took away the kind of starting with an extra card. And what sat behind that was the fact that they'd created an archetype of an aggro Ultramarines. Now they haven't reversed that change, but they've addressed the archetype issue. We are going to be able to play aggro Marines, and it's going to feel great.
Absolutely.
And this is a legendary card that wasn't being used. This is going to be used. Knights of Macragge, this, Chaplains, holy schmoly, you're going to have some big firstborns, boys. Big firstborns.
Absolutely. And then there's armored support, which is going to be even more nuts. Because
I'm not sure about this one. What did you think to armored support?
Oh, that's really good. But you know why it's really good? I'll explain why this is going to be big. I'm just not sure if there's going to be 1 or 2 copies in your deck, because look at this. You play armored support on 4 energy, right? That's a huge tempo loss. But don't forget that at some point, like very soon, you can play the Storm Talon, which is going to be dealing 3 damage to an enemy troop. And it's a codex, meaning that with energy refill, you can make it keep doing that. So you will have a chance of swinging the tempo afterwards. So essentially you lose 2 turns, but then you swing it back. And it's terrifying because if you have like a 2 armor Storm Talon, your enemy is forced to commit a hard removal. And after that, you drop a Dreadnought and then you drop a tank. And they're like, okay, how much hard removal can I have, like physically, to deal with all of this, right? So it could be quite scary. It could be quite scary. And don't forget, you can still play this on 3 energy with your counterattack. So yeah, there's
or you can play it, and if you're playing against Chaos, you can play it turn 2.
Exactly.
You want 1 discount. And if you're on the defense, you can actually also play it turn 2 because you can make it cost 1 less.
Absolutely.
With the is it Hive Factory, the defense card?
Yeah, I think it's the Hive Factory, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a huge deal.
Okay. Yeah.
And then there's like Gather the Company, which I mean it's fine. I guess Uriel might use it.
That's what I was thinking. I wasn't sure on this one because it's like the best case scenario is that it's basically 3 energy, draw 3 cards.
Yeah.
I think it's more likely going to be it's more likely going to be 4 energy, draw 3, whereas you've kind of got the 2 energy, draw 2. I personally don't think this is going to get played. What do you think?
Not much. Maybe Uriel might get 1 copy.
Might run 1 copy.
That's pretty much what it is. That's all.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, overall, super excited to play 3 types of Ultramarines. The heavy control, the vehicle control, and the aggro wide. So, super. Let's move on, BJ.
Necrons.
I guess it is time for Necrons. Let me just scroll down
And
here.
I'm really,
Oh
really looking forward. I'm really looking forward to getting your take on this because you are the Necron fanboy. Funnily enough, I think people might not know this. Were they your first faction that you
They were
did
my
the
first
collecting?
faction. Yeah, that's the
Mine too. I don't think people know that. Like my first faction I collected was Necrons. Tomb World was the first ever legendary card I got. I was like, I'm going to do Necrons, and I fell out of love with them relatively quickly. That you're much more of a fanboy, and I've been experimenting with like Nemesis, Ghost Archy type decks, and I think that these changes are wonderful for Nemesis, and we'll get into some of that. But also, I know that you'll be thinking about how Imatech comes back into play. So let's get into it.
Well, guys, you have no idea just how cool are gonna be some Emotech things, and Emotech is gonna be so powerful. And I'm gonna get right into that. And if you really want to find out more about like what the Necrons are gonna look like, go over on BJ's channel for part 2.